across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, do not adjust your sets. I am not Julia Hartley-Brewer. I am Jane Moore, Sun columnist and regular on Loose Women. Now, I'm used to having about three other people, in fact, to talk to about the subjects of the day. And of course, it's just me today, wittering on. So I want your calls. I want your messages. I want you to get involved. And I've got lots of interesting guests as well. Some of the subjects that we are talking about today is obviously the accusations that the national curriculum is about to be dumbed down by Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. I've got a lot to say on that, and I'm sure that you do too. We're also talking about Labour hitting middle-class earners with a £60 billion tax bomb, and of course the Britain sliding into economic crisis over 85 billion sickness bill. Now, there's very few people that know more about that particular last subject, the welfare bill, than Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, former Conservative Party leader, and of course was also very much instrumental with welfare bills as former Work and Pension Secretary between 2010 and 2016. And he joins me now. Good morning, Sir Ian.
Morning, Jane.
So is this now compared, I mean, I was saying that you were doing sort of really particularly looking at this years ago. Are we now in an unprecedented situation with the welfare bill? I mean, it feels as though the people that are getting up for work in the morning, there's less of them than the people staying at home.
Well, number one, to put this completely in context, we have to talk about what happened with the pandemic, because before the pandemic, when I resigned, having fallen out with the then Chancellor, but we'd got the lowest number of workless households since records began, and we'd saved £32 billion a year out of that budget because 1,600 people were going to work for the first time every single day. Those figures stand for themselves. And then along comes in 2019, 2020, the pandemic, and that has done untold damage to our social fabric and also to this whole issue of how much we spend on welfare, because they had to loosen all the purse strings and at the same time took away all the checks, the face-to-face checks and everything else. I was saying to them, don't do all this, because the loosening will get you into real trouble, because it's very difficult to put this back in the bottle, as it were, once you let it out. And the result has been that people got conditioned to the idea that that being on benefits was in fact a much more normal thing to do, and particularly with the rise of mental health. Now, the biggest problem the last government faced after the pandemic was that the mental health issues had gone soaring. So people claim depression and anxiety, and they basically then get written off, which is what the whole fit note thing is about. A lot of GPs are very uneasy about trying to diagnose somebody absolutely specifically with a mental health problem, particularly something like depression and anxiety, because it's not as, musculoskeletal stuff, you've got a bad leg or you haven't got a bad leg or whatever. You can be much clearer about that. So the huge rise in that, particularly, I think about 50-60% of all the mental health claims now are depression and anxiety, and we know that depression and anxiety, the best cure for them is work. Work is by the health service notified as a health treatment. So being out of work is the worst thing you can do for somebody who's depressed and anxious.
And particularly, of course, sorry to interrupt, but particularly, of course, the younger generation. There are reports today of the high number of the rising cases of anxiety and depression. And of course, they are the future workforce. So unless it's addressed, it's just going to get worse, right?
Yes, it is. And the Centre for Social Justice, which I set up, has done a lot of work on this, and the view that they're putting forward, which I believe now the Conservatives have accepted, which the government should accept, which is you don't pay people who come first and claim to be depressed or have suffered from anxiety. You don't pay them directly the benefits. What you do is you try and keep them in work or get them back into work, but at the same time you use some of the savings you would make to actually make sure we've got some kind of support treatment around them so they go back into work, they've got people to help them, recover from their depression. And a lot of this is also trying to get sort of fixed on the ups and downs of life. We've medicalized so much of what you and I would probably remember we things we'd have to get on with, sort out ourselves, things are bad at work, whatever. How do you sort that out? And being online is not a helpful way of doing it. Because what actually happens is you get worse. Many of these sites now talk to you about how you can get off work, how you can stay off work. But of course, staying off work for somebody with depression and anxiety is a disaster because they need functionality in their lives. They need to get up in the morning. They need to have a purpose. Once you take that purpose away, their condition just gets worse. So all of this.
So
is
if anyone watching this is currently at home off work with anxiety and depression, which of course are very real conditions, they might say, well, look, I went to the doctor, I got a 5-minute slot, they couldn't wait to get me out of the door, they just signed me off. There was, as you just said, there's no external support to sort of help me with my problem. So it is sort of like there's a lot of things that need to change here, aren't there, to actually be able to facilitate getting people into work. And that costs money.
It does, and the key thing here is the worst thing we can do is to have somebody just written off work. So companies need to step up to this as well. We have our companies aren't great at this. You've invested all this money in somebody who's working there, and then they, for various reasons, suffer from depression or anxiety. Lots of companies just say roll them into statutory sick pay, and out the other end they'll go to the state on the sickness benefit. That's the worst you can do for them because they're unlikely ever to get off it again. What you want is to help companies make sure they, if necessary, drop them down the hours, but get the treatment for them. And the government needs to do more of investing in the treatment side of things rather than paying them direct benefits. So take away the incentive of having the benefit, say we must, in the meantime, get you into work or hold you in work while we also surround you with the right sort of treatment to help you stabilize and then go up the hours and get your life back. That's the better way to do it. And you would save, the figures we saw and the figures we did at the Centre for Social Justice, between £7.5 and £9 billion a year out of the budget, simply because you're now using the money you save to invest in helping stabilize people and keep them in work. Keeping somebody in work is critical if they suffer from depression or anxiety, and that has got to be a monumental effort, and that will save money in due course, but also, more importantly, give those people a better life and provide a workforce for companies that want to set up in the UK.
And of course, a lot of people, small businesses, are saying that actually even people in work, it's very hard to get them to come in. I was reading a story earlier this week about a man that worked at HMRC, obviously a civil servant, who flatly refused to come back into the office after COVID. And thankfully for common sense, he lost his case and ended up having to pay back £20,000. So, COVID has a lot to answer for, doesn't it? And I think our response to COVID, shutting down schools, I feel that the first lockdown was justified, but after that, we sort of just took our eye off the ball and failed to see the mental effect that it was going to have on people.
The way that we reacted to COVID, now looking at it, was a disaster. Sweden did it much better than we did. They kept people in work. They said, by all means, meet up, but only in your family groups. And if you are meeting up in a restaurant, you stay in that family group. You don't go to the bar and that sort of thing. So they basically said to the public, use your common sense and make sure, therefore, so they didn't spread as badly and they didn't have proportionately the same number of deaths as we had. Protect the most vulnerable, care homes and the very sick, and the rest should look after themselves, but use common sense. We, I'm afraid, under the real pressure from many of the scientists who got this, I think, very badly wrong, went for full closure of everything. I mean, closing schools when children are the least likely to get COVID because of the teachers. Well, the answer is mask up the teachers if necessary, but not the children.
Yeah, and it kind of took away the sort of the muscle, if you like, of going to school every day, staying within. But let's move on to another topic. Let's move on to Rachel Reeves' sort of, I mean, how do you describe it? A word salad yesterday. She sort of did this big sort of Trump-esque podium and flags, which suggested she was going to say something incredibly interesting. And as Kemi Badenoch described, it was sort of a waffle bomb. But in the middle of it, it seemed to be sort of saying we've all got to do our bit, which of course is politician speak for we are now going to sort of do a big tax clobber on people further down the earnings bracket. So they're saying here, you know, set to hit middle class earners with a 60 billion tax bomb to plug budget gaps. What did you think of that speech?
Well, I agree with Kemi, it was a waffle bomb, but we need to divide the two words to show what it was about. The waffle was the very fact she got up to speak in that very aggravating way that she does, rather lecturing us. And the bomb was the potential £50 billion that she's going to extract from people who are already struggling with their bills. We are overtaxed in this country, over-regulated, and the true problem here is no wonder we're doing badly. Businesses are saying to themselves, what's the point of setting up a business here? Because people basically can't afford to work here. Those who are wealthy wanted to set businesses up, you know, the non-doms and everything else, they didn't pay huge tax here, but what they did was set up businesses, spend a lot of money investing it in the UK. They've all gone, and the next thing we'll have is loads of people deciding there are better places for them to live simply because these costs are high. And why is she having to tax? Because the Labour government refuses point blank to make any savings whatsoever from the public exchequer. I mean, you talked about welfare spending. I mean, they couldn't even get a 5 billion 5 billion saving past their backbenchers. So I pressed them the other day, what level of savings would they be asking for from the welfare budget? They wouldn't answer. The answer is they're not going to try and save any money from one of the biggest and growing budgets in Britain, which is also damaging too many lives. And at the same time, they're not going to cut, it appears, the civil service. They're not going to do anything to bring us back under control. And that is the real problem here. You have to reduce your spending. Every household knows that. You know, you can't just say, well, devil take it, we're going to carry on spending money.
It's basic housekeeping.
Exactly, you have to, but they're not doing any of that. And that's why she's going to lean on the poor old middle class again to say, well, you can pick up the bill when they're the ones who are working hard trying to make a living for themselves and their families.
Just stay with us, Ian. I just want to go to Georgina, a caller in London. Hi, Georgina.
Good morning, Jane. Good morning, Sir Ian. It's wonderful to talk to you. I've got a few things I want to say. I'm actually busting to say, to be honest with you. I watched Rachel Reeves make her address the other day, and I've never seen anyone look so uncomfortable in her own skin. I don't even think she could bring herself to digest what piffle she was trying to feed us. Unfortunately, she's shown herself time and again to be inadequate in her job. Maybe that has something to do with her lack of experience. Sometimes something has got to give. And I think that time will be the next budget, as we're going to be financially stripped. She will be coming once again to us, the taxpayer, to rob as much as she can from our hard-working taxpayers to bail out Labour yet again and their insatiable appetite for overspending. We, the British public, know that we are the adults in the room, not the Labour government. They've already shown that. We also know that we have to invest in our country via our taxes to keep our country going. But we need to see value for our money and get more bang for our buck. And at the moment, we're getting nothing in return for our hard-earned cash. Our country has fallen through a state of dilapidation. We have no defences, inadequate policing, very poor NHS and dental services, a less than acceptable standard of education, and extremely poor road services. For goodness sake, some people haven't even had the waste taken and collected, and that's to name but a few. What's the only ones benefiting are the ones that don't contribute to our economy.
Georgina, Thank you. I'm just going to interrupt you there. I think you could actually be the next Chancellor with that pitch. I think that was excellent. Sir Ian, you can sense the frustration in Georgina's voice, and that is played out in very large parts of the country.
Yeah, she's absolutely right, of course, and I can sense that frustration because, you know, when I'm in the constituency, people say the same to me. You know, what in hell's name is going on? Yeah, we had COVID. We understand there were problems from COVID, but doesn't government have the responsibility to get that sorted out? I mean, you've got this, for example, you've got this ridiculous COVID inquiry going on now, spending near on 200 million with many more months to come to do what? I mean, every lawyer gets paid huge salaries to attend the damn thing. And every other country's finished theirs about 2.5 years ago and put right some of the things that were wrong. So this is an example of how we've lost the plot here in the UK, in our public servants and in our politicians. And I have to say, she's right, because at the end of it all, we have to decide whether we are going to save the money that we are overspending on all sorts of projects, including on welfare, I'm afraid, reform all of that, get that saving. Now, I saw her say there would be no austerity. What does she mean by austerity? I tell you what she's ruling out. She's ruling out saving any money from over expenditure on public servants and on all the areas that we seem to have got caught up in.
And we've still got the bomb of the budget to come, of course, which I'm sure is going to have a hell lot more pain. Very quickly, Sir Ian, before you go, can I just ask you your views? Labour has been accused of educational vandalism as it moves to, quote unquote, dumb down the curriculum. What is your thoughts on that story?
Well, it's transparent. It's like when they first came in, every striking group got their money paid pretty much. And now, of course, this is the long-term return for the education unions, who have been demanding all these sort of changes because they don't like the hours that teachers have to work, etc. And so they've been complaining forever about all this. They don't like the idea of Ofsted. They'd get rid of it tomorrow if they could. So this is all, I'm afraid, about kowtowing to the teacher unions, as we are getting in every single area at the moment. So you think we've got problems with expenditure, wait till they finish giving in to every single union.
Okay. Well, Sir Ian, thank you very, very much. Very nice to talk to you. Have a good day. We will be back right after this.
If you can find ways of letting the private sector breathe, not having them spending nearly all of their time complying with rules, then you can get an awful lot done. Growth goes up, more people are employed, more people are getting pay rises, more people are moving into higher skilled jobs, and suddenly the money does start to flow into the exchequer. Or if not suddenly, over a year or two, you're in a much, much brighter position. So I'm very keen to hear what Reform are going to do on that. And I think they're likely to stay consistent on that.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. That was a great lively chat with Sir Ian Duncan-Smith we just had there. Mark from St Albans has messaged in. Jane, I was born in 1960. That's 2 years before me. I grew up in the nightmare of the Labour governments of the 1970s. Yes, I do remember it well, doing my homework by candlelight. So for me and those of my era, we're not surprised by the fact that this Labour government's modus operandi is simply tax and spend. It's just what they do. It's actually built into the very fabric of their being. They just love talking and spending other people's money. Unfortunately, when the money runs out and they're eventually replaced, it will probably take at least 2 terms of the new government before we get things back on track. So by my reckoning, we should be okay in about 12 to 15 years' time. Just in time for me to be heading towards pushing up the daisies. Deep joy. P.S. Sir Ian is the best PM we never had. Yes, I probably tend to agree with that comment about Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. Now then, the next story that we're moving on to is this internal report from the BBC, which is accusing it of pushing Hamas bias around Hamas lies, around the world. Now, it was sent last month to the Director General Tim Davie and Chairman Samir Shah, and of course there are now demands for Tim Davie to resign. I'm joined now by Danny Cohen. He's the former director of BBC Television, and he's now a columnist at the Daily Telegraph. Morning, Danny. How are you?
Good morning. Good, thank you. How are you, Jane?
I'm good, thank you very much. Well, here we go, another day, another story about BBC bias. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here a bit. I mean, you've been at the very top of this national institution. It is vast, isn't it? So how does it work that the ethos of balance permeates down? Because, of course, Tim Davie cannot be sitting there looking at every sort of junior reporter's actions.
You're absolutely right, Jane. It's a vast organisation putting out vast amounts of material every day. I think why this is ultimately responsible of the most senior executives, Tim Davie, CEO of BBC News, Deborah Turnes, is that these are systemic problems. If it was just one incident, so for example, this very clearly misedited clip of Donald Trump, if it was one incident, then it's individual responsibility or the responsibility of one team. But I think what the report from Michael Prescott shows is that there was a systemic bias within the BBC, and it went across a number of issues: the American election and Donald Trump, Israel and the Hamas war. There's more today that's been released on immigration, and I believe there's also things in the report around the issue of trans representation. So these are systemic issues. And the other part of it, which is really important to remember, is these aren't the first time these have been raised with the BBC. People like myself have been raising them with the BBC for over 2 years. And what Michael Prescott report shows is that the BBC has basically been ignoring those complaints, even though it had knowledge from within the organisation that there were serious issues.
So what do you think should have been done the second this report dropped?
Well, I think at another time when editorial standards were held in higher regard at the BBC, people would have lost their jobs. There would have been a lot of soul searching, and there would have been significant questions about reform of the newsroom to try and ensure greater standards of impartiality. I think the problem we've got now is the questions the BBC executives seem to ask themselves is my job safe? And can we get away with this? And if the answers on both of those are yes, they will disregard very clear evidence of bias because they feel they can get away with it. The other thing I'd say, Jane, is that people like me have been criticising the BBC for these things from the outside for a number of years now. Mr. Prescott was inside the BBC. This is what makes this one so different. Mr. Prescott was an independent advisor to the BBC for 3 years and had access to the reports, the internal reports, which were showing evidence of bias, and had access and could witness the lack of management action to really address them. And what's clear is he's written this report and sent it to the board of the BBC because he'd run out of patience and was in dismay that the executives wouldn't deal with these problems properly. So I think this is very, very serious for the BBC, but there's a real question of whether they will hold themselves to account or whether they'll continue to ignore very dangerous signals for the future of the organisation. Because if trust in the BBC erodes, the BBC is in real trouble.
Do you not feel that trust has already eroded to a certain extent?
Yes.
Do you not feel a lot of people listening to this will say, I haven't trusted the BBC for a long time?
Yes, Jane, I think that's right. I mean, a lot of people would have lost faith around Brexit. You know, a lot of people would have felt that the reporting around Brexit wasn't balanced. For someone like me from the Jewish community, you know, we've been shocked by the representation of this conflict. It's a terrible conflict. War is terrible, and innocent people have suffered on both sides. But we've been deeply disturbed by the way this is being reported by the BBC. And Mr. Prescott's report details a number of examples on both BBC Arabic, Newsnight, other places where he could see clear evidence of bias in the way the BBC was representing what was going on.
So you've been very high up at the BBC yourself. If you were Director General now and you received this report, what would you do? What is it that needs to happen here?
I would replace the head of news. You know, I think it's unsustainable. And I think he should consider his own position. You know, we saw over the summer, for me, it's about 3 scandals too many with Mr. Davey. You know, we had another one over just a few weeks ago, really, over the summer, where a rapper chanted death threats from the stage at Glastonbury and other very, very troubling comments related to the Jewish community. And Mr. Davey was there at the time. Nothing happened. The material stayed online for hours afterwards. So I think in his case, it's 3 scandals too many. The 3 scandals too many. It really is time for change.
So you agree with, I think Kemi Badenoch has said heads should roll at the BBC. You agree with that?
Yeah, I think it needs a shock to the system. I think they're very complacent, and I think they need a moment where they really take very seriously that these kinds of failures are not acceptable and continue to erode trust in the BBC.
OK, Danny, thank you very much for your time. We will be back right after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We're getting lots of messages from you, so thank you very much for that, and keep them coming. And also, of course, you can call in. It is Sharon. She's 64, so around the same age as me. It's very interesting, this generational thing. I think we all sort of feel the same way when we were born back then. My father and thousands of children were taken from their parents and evacuated during the Second World War. They grew up to be hard-working, law-abiding citizens. They didn't do anxiety and go sick. Yes, I guess it's about resilience, isn't it? And but of course they also weren't dealing with social media, were they? Which I do think also is very much part of the problem. Laura from Wiltshire says, I watched someone in the doctors yesterday get signed off work so quickly they practically diagnosed themselves. And that sort of alludes, I think, to what I was saying with Sir Ian, that a lot of doctor's appointments these days are sort of 5 minutes and people say they can't wait to get me out of the door. OK, we are now moving on to stories about public safety. And obviously every day we read the papers and there's something that makes you feel that we are living in a much unsafer world, particularly out on our streets. Now, today, protesters who target MPs' homes have been told they could face up to 6 months in jail under Home Office plans. And it seems that almost all MPs, in fact 96%, have experienced at least one instance of harassment or intimidation, which, to be honest, irrespective of how well you think our politicians are doing, is totally unacceptable. That is, you know, that you can't turn up at somebody's house, you can't personally harass them. And of course, if you remember, Just Stop Oil, I think it was last year, sang climate crisis inspired carols outside Sir Keir Starmer's home. Now, don't know how bad their singing was, but you could argue, well, OK, that's not against his safety, but it's still outside his home. I still think it's a step too far. We're also talking about public safety on trains after Saturday's mass stabbing. And the Southport inquiry is ongoing, and it's been hearing from Axel Radicabana's brother, who says that he feared the brother would kill their father before the attack. There were instances of police being called to the house because of his violent behaviour. So we have on the line now Philip Grindle. He is former Scotland Yard detective, and he's a security expert who has advised MPs, particularly following the murder of Joe Cox. He runs a company called Diffuse, and he's here with us now. Good morning, Philip.
Hi, good morning, Jane.
Am I right? Is it just a feeling that we're all a little less safe, or is it statistically still not bad?
I think it is absolutely a perception rather than a reality. I think that, I mean, the statistics suggest we are, or violent crime is not increasing, and we are as safe as we have been. I think when we look at these type of statistics, though, we have to be slightly cautious because there's a lack of trust in policing at the moment. You might argue that less people are reporting crime, and therefore the statistics they're referring to are not necessarily as accurate as they might be. How many people are having an incident every day and not reporting it, and therefore it isn't recorded, it isn't within the research. So I think we have to be slightly cautious of the statistics, but in general terms, I think, you know, you've alluded to in your last piece around social media, I think there's lots of reasons.
Sorry, we've lost the sound on you there. We're just going to try and get you back, Philip. I think the connection has dropped out. I just want to tell you a little something about Philip, because I know he's been involved in a lot of sort of behind the scenes things on personal safety, as I said earlier, with politicians and things. He's got a couple of books out, Personal Threat Management. Have we got you back? Ah,
I think
Philip,
so. I hope so.
There you are. We've got you back. Sorry, carry on with what you were saying.
Sorry, the point I was making is that statistically we are as safe as we've ever been. But of course, statistics don't tell the full picture.
You were saying about the trust in the police. I mean,
yeah, if people don't trust the police, they don't report crimes to the police.
I mean, I just want to interject there, because obviously if there are any police officers watching, you're a former police officer yourself, I would never want to do that job. You know, they go into incredibly unsafe situations, and a lot of the time they get it very right indeed, but a lot of the time they get it wrong. You as a former police officer, what is going wrong there? Because it's never really about the officer on the street, is it? It's about something higher up.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's about the officer on the street. You know, we've seen incidences over the last few years where I think it would be difficult to blame senior leadership for some of the, the worst tragedies that have gone on, the Sarah Everard and other things like that. Yes, there are wider implications around funding and other issues of that nature. But I think, certainly when I joined the police, everything I was doing wasn't being filmed and wasn't then on Instagram or TikTok within 30 seconds of me doing it. And therefore, people make their minds up based on a clip or an edited clip of something without having the full picture. The classic one would be, why does it take 6 people to hold someone down? Why can't 2 people do it or something? Well, if you've ever tried to tackle someone who is, emotionally charged, potentially violent, it does take people, and also you've got to do it in a way that is hopefully safe. So the job is made to look a lot easier, and everyone likes to comment on it, having never done it. And but actually, it's very complex and it's very complicated, and you're dealing with very difficult situations. You're sending young PCs into dealing with often, sometimes very mentally ill people.
I mean,
they're not really trained to do.
We can't really talk about the stabbings on the train because the man in question has been charged, so we can't really go into too much detail on that. But, when we look at stories like this in the past, quite often the perpetrator, there has been a pattern of behaviour where maybe they could have been caught earlier and the police didn't do anything or didn't act when they could have done. What happens there? What is the disconnect? Because a lot of people watching this will say, look, when my car gets stolen, the police aren't interested. When I get mugged on the street, they say, send us the CCTV if you've got it. People feel as though the police have abandoned them on this sort of low-level crime. What's going wrong there? Why has that happened?
Well, I think it's happened for a number of... One is we can't get away from the kind of defunding of policing. And therefore, we've got a lot less officers out there doing what they should do, and also a lot less police staff doing what they should do, which means that officers are backfilling roles that could be done by police staff and not on the street. Secondly, I think priorities have been driven by politics and by sentiment. So, when I can remember as a young PC, we just did what we were told to do. We went out and we did local policing. It seems now that because we've got the police and crime commissioners and all sorts of other issues, politics is very much more involved and policing is driven by that. And, whatever the police do, they're criticised. And so it's very difficult. It's kind of like, what we see now is almost like 5-year-olds chasing a ball around a pitch, rather than actually setting out a strategy and saying, right, we're going to deal with local communities. And I think that's one of the key aspects around, why do we feel less safe in our local communities? Is because one of the issues is we don't see police officers walking around our local community.
Absolutely.
My sister last week had her car really badly damaged by somebody who stopped, but he had no MOT, no anything else. So she calls the police. Can you come down and look, investigate this and help me? No, we'll just send you a form.
Yeah.
So that immediately just thinks, next time I'm not even going to bother telling you.
Absolutely. And just while we have you, because we're running out of time, I know you're sort of like a personal safety expert. And, again, let's stress that statistically it's still very unlikely to be a victim of crime. But for people who are feeling nervous, what measures can they do to protect themselves?
Well, it obviously depends where they're feeling nervous. But I mean, if one of the problems is we're kind of inundated with news right now, whether it's from legitimate news sources, social media, etc. If you're going to read the story, read the whole story, not just the headline, because the headline is designed to attract you in and often is not truly reflective of what's going on. Don't spend your whole life on social media. Get out and get to know your neighbours, get involved in your community. It sounds really silly, but actually the more isolated we become, the more threatened we feel. You see someone across the road who looks different from you, and your perceptions and what you're reading might direct your views on that. But actually, you don't even know who these people are. You'll find they're just the same as you. They may be feeling as lonely and isolated as you. Make friends with people locally. You'll feel that helps you feel safer. But equally, if a light's gone out in your street, tell the local authority. If they don't know about things, they can't deal with things. If there's
tell your local authority, and they'll take 6 months to replace.
Yeah, I get that. But at least you're actually doing something. You're taking action. You're not just sitting there being a victim.
Yeah.
Same with the police. Even if the police don't do a good job, tell them. If they, so many people say things, but actually they didn't tell them at the time. With the rail thing, rail incident recently, we see these other incidents coming up of, oh, this happened previously, and I've dealt with the same with MPs as well, where MPs said, oh, yeah, but that happened to me. Yeah, but you never actually told anyone. So, it's great telling us now, but you didn't tell us at the time.
OK, well, that's great advice, Philip. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm glad we managed to get you back on the line. That's Philip Grindle. We will be back straight after this.
Previous governments have not adequately faced up to these challenges.
Seriously, love, can you get to the point?
Too often, political convenience has been prioritised over economic imperative. The decision to pursue a policy of austerity after the financial crisis dealt a hammer blow.
Hold her a minute. David Wooding, 10-second reaction. How long is it going to be before this woman who doesn't know how to add up just says, I'm going to raise your taxes?
Well, she's sort of breaking it to us gently.
If you can find ways of letting the private sector breathe, not having them spending nearly all of their time complying with rules, then you can get an awful lot done. Growth goes up, more people are employed, more people are getting pay rises, more people are moving into higher skilled jobs, and suddenly the money does start to flow into the exchequer. Or if not suddenly, over a year or two, you're in a much, much brighter position. So I'm very keen to hear what Reform are going to do on that. And I think they're likely to stay consistent on that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is talk.
Hello and welcome back. Thanks for your company today. We've been getting lots of messages from you on the BBC story. The BBC has become like a good friend who has let us down once too often. There's come a point where you decide never to trust them again. They have been ghosted, says Ian. John in Dagenham, the licence fee needs to go because the BBC has been pushing a left-wing agenda for years. And we just had a very interesting chat with former policeman Philip Grindle there about just personal safety and overall feeling of unease on our streets. Jane, as an ex-copper, I can tell you that when I was in the job, 2 police were enough to apprehend any criminal, regardless how big or deranged. We are the only European country which does all of this. Why, says Paul. So that would be a funding issue, of course, sending too many police officers to apprehend somebody. So do keep your messages coming in. Right now, we're going to be moving over to talk to former head teacher Tim Clark. Now, this is on today's big story that Labour has been accused of educational vandalism as it moves to dumb down curriculum by scrapping flagship Tory drive towards tough GCSEs in favour of Mickey Mouse subjects, says the Daily Mail. Tim, do you welcome this morning, and do you agree with any of that or all of it?
Well, morning, Jane. Can I start by just making 2 or 3 general comments, and then I'll pick up your points specifically. First of all, these are only recommendations. This isn't what the government's saying it's going to do. It's set up this working party, and these are the recommendations that the working party has made. So these are not set in tablets of stone. The first thing I'd say is, and I say this at every opportunity, the single biggest issue facing schools today is the teacher recruitment and retention crisis. More than a half of our schools say the biggest reason why they're being held back is because of teacher shortages. That should be the government's priority. And I'll use a strong...
Why is that, Tim? I mean, I have a friend whose daughter went into teaching, and after a year she left because she found she said it was like crowd management, and she felt very unsupported. Is that
declining behaviour is one of the biggest reasons? The single biggest reason is workload. And interestingly, almost 50% of teachers who quit say it's because the government keeps interfering and making changes. So this won't help that, presumably. But this is, I'd use a strong word and say this is criminal, because this has been growing for 10, 20 years. I'm not making a political point here, because neither Labour or Conservative have resolved it. And the point I simply want to make is, until that is resolved, it's a bit pointless talking about the curriculum, because if you haven't got enough teachers to deliver it, what's the point? Anyway, that's my hobby.
I mean, it's weird. It doesn't, you know, to use it doesn't seem like rocket science to get it right, to engage children in subjects, to get good teachers, to pay them properly. What is stopping that? Is it the unions?
No, I mean, it's funny you mentioned pay, because if you look at every year the DfE does a survey of teachers' attitudes, and pay does appear on that list, but it is way, way down the list. It's below poor pupil behaviour, it's below stress, it's below workload, it's below poor school leadership. And certainly below government's people who have no experience of teaching.
Sorry to interrupt, when you refer to workload, do you mean sort of marking homework at night, or are you talking about the sort of bureaucracy of it all?
Well, both of those, and of course declining pupil behaviour makes that more difficult. It adds to the workload. But anyway, I said we're going off at a tangent, but I do make that point to start with. I think the government has started at the wrong place. It should have started by resolving that problem before it started looking at the curriculum. The second thing to say is I have real worries about this curriculum review because it's been so rushed. The curriculum, of course, is fundamental, and it's especially going to be fundamental if it now applies to all schools and all academies. Until recently, of course, academies have been exempt. So they've got to get this right. but this was the panel was only set up last year. There isn't a single classroom teacher on it. There's not a parent representative. There's not an employer's representative.
Why?
They only gave, well, absolutely. And although apparently it's a panel of experts, and they only allowed 2 months for taking opinions and views of other stakeholders. In that 2 months, they got 7,000 views. There are 9 million sets of parents. There are 500,000 school teachers. There are goodness knows how many employers. None of those stakeholders have been represented. So that is a real worry, I think, the fact it's been rushed through. But the third point I'd say is what we mustn't do is say that the curriculum mustn't change. Of course it must change. I mean, it's over 10 years since it was reviewed last time. And take, for example, AI. AI wasn't an issue 10 years ago, but surely now schools have got to teach kids about AI. It would be remiss if they didn't.
Well, they were sort of starting to teach them about coding, and then that's sort of become redundant, hasn't it?
Yeah, things move on. And so we've got, the curriculum has got to evolve. And what we must also admit, though some people won't like me saying this, is that the current curriculum isn't some golden panacea. Remember, 1/3 of kids fail their GCSEs. Now, I'm not calling for prizes for all, but what is the point of 11 years of compulsory schooling to leave with nothing? 1/3 of kids leave primary school not being able to write at the expected standard. Less than a half of kids in this country at the age of 10 now feel confident at reading. And what's even more worrying, less than 1/3 actually enjoy reading. Now, put all that together, we have not got a world-class panacea of a curriculum. Things need to change. So
do you agree with any of the changes that they're bringing in? I mean, I'm looking here. They're looking at more concentration on art and design, drama or dance. I have to say, I'm quite for that, because I do feel that the current curriculum overlooks creativity. It sort of rather degrades it.
Yeah, I mean, there are several things that I think are positive. I'm not saying I'm not supporting it all by any means. I have very serious reservations about a couple of things. But yes, I think the emphasis on the performing arts. There's also an emphasis on food and nutrition. Well, considering the latest figures on obesity, I think it's essential that we teach kids to cook and to eat properly.
Finances.
Yes, finance, the role of oracy to go alongside reading and writing. Now, a lot of work has been done in schools recently on oracy, and it is a really important area of the curriculum that has often been overlooked. So I think that's good. Taking citizenship down into primary schools. A lot of primary schools do it anyway. But considering we have more exclusions now for violence and rudeness and this sort of thing, surely we should be teaching kids to get on with each other and respect authority and this sort of thing. So there are, I think, quite a few good things. Diagnostic testing. The idea of introducing tests simply to help teachers judge how kids are getting on, not to publish them in league tables or anything like that, but as a tool to help teachers. All of those, I think, are certainly worth exploring.
Absolutely. And what about, I mean, I read this where I couldn't quite believe it. I still don't understand why mobile phones are not banned in every school in Britain. They are merely a distraction. Why is it not? I mean, that is complete common sense, surely.
Well, I'd agree with you, and it's been in the hands of heads to ban phone. I mean, I first became a head in over 20 years ago, nearly 25 years ago, and we banned mobile phones in the school then. Yeah. So I don't know the answer to your question. It is common sense, and why all schools don't do it, I just don't know.
I just don't understand why, they don't just make it easy for head teachers and just say from government level, no phones, end of.
Well, it is, there are some nuances to it. So, for example, what do you mean by banning phones? Do you mean kids are not allowed to have phones on them when they enter the school?
No, they bring them in, they put them in a locker, and they get them at the end of the day.
So my first headship was of a rural school where we had kids travelling 30 miles. And so my view was it was safe. It was a safety issue. They should have them on them, but they lock them in the lockers during the school day.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But interestingly, my second headship was in an inner city school in the East End of London, and we banned kids from having phones at all. They were not allowed to have phones in uniform. And that may seem rather draconian or rather odd, but that was on the advice of the Met, because the single biggest reason for kids being mugged is to nick mobile phones.
Exactly.
So we got the message out
Tim,
that kids in our uniforms didn't have a mobile phone.
Before we go to the news, I just very quickly want to bring in Marcus from Liverpool. Hi, Marcus. What would you like to say?
I'd just like to say I think it's a good idea that they're bringing this stuff back to schools, because in the 90s, if I'd left my school with half of the stuff they didn't teach, well, they taught me how to, cook, they taught me how to manage money, I wouldn't be where I am now, because I left school with next to nothing. And I'm now a support worker in a hospital. I've done my MVQ freeze, and I probably wouldn't have left school and done any of that without the help of a school actually teaching people how to do just normal life
That's
skills.
Amazing, Marcus. So was that just like the individual decision of whoever ran your school?
I think so, yeah, because basically I wasn't great at maths. I had dyslexia
Join
at the
time.
And it wasn't really recognised. And then what they did was they decided then that I'd be better doing this PSA skills, which was like teach him how to live, teach him about the local area, teach him about money, teach him how to cook, reasonable meals. And without that skills, I probably wouldn't be here. I'd probably be on the street, like some people are who don't get that teaching. And I was quite surprised. I have two kids, and I listened to the way they were taught, and it's like they were taught like a robot.
Yeah.
And they don't know. They come to me and say, well, how do you pay a council tax bill, Marcus? How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you know if you're paying too much gas and that? There's no preparation.
Well, we've lost you there. Thank you for that, Marcus. Tim, that makes, again, perfect sense. It's like, why is it not just an overall thing? I mean, I do understand this new thing that they're saying about the curriculum is good, because it sounds like they're going to be doing what Marcus benefited from.
Yes, I mean, I say there are some very good things in it, and I'm quite happy to say that. But also there are, I think, some worrying things.
Yeah.
I think there is a danger that perhaps doing away with the EBAC. I'm not sure about that. The EBAC qualification.
Yeah. Okay, Tim. Sorry, I'm going to have to wrap up there because we now have to go to a break and the news.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Thank you for all your messages. Keep them coming in. Leo, hi Jane, nice to hear you on the radio. I'm a survivor of the London Blitz, and if anyone was suffering from stress and anxiety, it was people of my generation. I would not wish those horrific times on anyone, but I can't help wonder if the huge numbers of jobless people of today who have been signed off are just working the system. The government needs to get a grip of the situation and the welfare budget in general, or it will literally bankrupt the country. Yes, I mean, I agree, Leo. I think certainly within those numbers, obviously there'll be a lot of genuine cases, but there's bound to be people that are working the system too. Kitty in Hove. Hi, Jane. I've always loved listening to your opinions. Thank you, Kitty. With reference to security surrounding our public figures and their safety, that you were talking about with Philip Grindell, I want to ask, where is the security and protection for us, British citizens, when there are thousands of illegal immigrants living here in the UK without any means to identify who they are, who they might be? Yes, I do agree. I mean, we do have a lot of homegrown criminals as well, Kitty, but of course, do we want to also add to the issue by importing criminals from other countries? A lot of them are completely hard-working, reasonable people that want to build a life here, but it's the others that we should be worried about, who are coming here for less altruistic reasons. Now, my next guest is someone that I have worked with for years and years and years. He's former political editor of The Sun. He's supposed to have retired, but he's so good at what he does that we keep bringing him out of retirement. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning, Jane, and thank you very much for inviting me on your show.
The Sean Connery of journalism, that's what I always call you. You're looking fantastic. Lots of stories to talk about today. Let's start. I mean, that message that I just read out from Kitty in Hove saying about, you know, illegal immigrants coming here who are with criminal tendencies, etc. We've got two sort of stories around that. The migrant that followed a young woman out of a nightclub to attack her. A court has heard that he caught up with her underneath a railway bridge, grabbed her by the neck before carrying out a sexual attack. That is terrifying. And of course, in tandem with that, we have France, who is holding Britain. I think our deal with France runs out in March, if I'm right. And the reports today are saying that Paris wants to squeeze even more money out of us. I think we've already paid them nearly 500 million already. They want to squeeze more money out of us to help control our borders.
Yes, well, I mean, it was never going to work with France, and no matter how much money we give them, they're not going to do the job of stopping migrants from leaving their country to come to our country. They don't want them in their country either. So, in a sense, we're doing them a favour by taking so many.
What I don't understand is, how does it cost we pay them under the Sandhurst Pact 476 million. Put a load of police on the beach. There was that one photo they did, do you remember, on social media, where it was like, we've stuck a knife into a boat and deflated it, and we've stopped this boat. Why are they not doing that on a daily basis along the coast?
Well, it would be the simple option, wouldn't it? And it works, obviously, because they are immediately unable to set sail, and in shallow waters as well. So everything's safe, everything's fine. There's no reason why they can't do it. It's an attitude which emanates from the very top. Emmanuel Macron has never forgiven us for Brexit. He wants to punish us. He's not very keen on the rivalry between France and Britain is centuries old, but it seems to have reached its pinnacle under his presidency. And I don't think we're ever, while he's president, or possibly with any president of France, going to solve the problem of people coming across on these boats. We need to do something else. And there are things we can do, but we're tied by political cowardice.
And where does that cowardice come from? Is it sort of political correctness? Because, I mean, surely any politician now must look at the mood of the country and feel that, you know, doing something is going to be a beneficial thing, that the people are going to back it.
Well, I think that the politicians have ignored the views, which are very significant and substantial, of the voters of this country for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem today is that we have a government of Labour human rights lawyers led by Keir Starmer, who is a KC in this subject. And they really, the Labour Party really doesn't believe in borders. I don't think that Keir Starmer really believes in borders, not to the point of protecting them. And I just think that they can't bring themselves to take any action which they would immediately regard in other people's hands as being racist.
But when but Trevor, when you're Prime Minister, what you believe is irrelevant, isn't it? You're supposed to be sort of delivering for the people that voted you in, and the manifesto that you delivered, which was very much, we're going to smash the small boats, we're going to be this party of decision and action, and it's all just completely come to nothing.
No, Jane, you've been in journalism a long time. You've got to learn that politicians, particularly the ones we've just elected, are liars. They will lie and cheat to get votes. They'll say, well, I mean, look at Rachel Reeves and her preparations for this hideous budget, which is the whole Labour government was elected on the basis of a lying manifesto.
I mean, let's move on to that. What the hell was all that about? I mean, the podium, the flags, the sort of Trump-esque sort of presentation, and then it was complete word salad.
Yes, it ended up as the Trump of doom, didn't it? I mean, what we were looking forward to maybe was a nice day with plans for, and then suddenly in strides this woman who speaks with a sort of foghorn voice, telling us that we're doomed, that we're all going to have to pay a lot more money, and that voters in the sort of pensionable age group are probably going to have to pay £15,000 each more every year. Now, you don't have to be in the, because I don't hope I don't have to explain that income tax is going to go up, national insurance contributions are going to come down to compensate those below the sort of £45,000 a year mark. That is aimed directly at pensioners who do not pay national insurance. And they are going to suddenly find what the Labour Party believes are the broad shoulders of the wealthy retired, that their income and their disposable income is going to be slashed in the next budget very significantly.
I mean, I just can't understand why you call a press conference to spend 20 minutes saying precisely nothing. I mean, A, it makes it looks like you think the electorate are idiots, that they're not going to see through it. And B, why are they not listening to the country? I just don't understand it. It's like they're sort of deaf, dumb and blind.
Well, nor do many people in the cabinet and the ministers in this government, MPs, backbenchers. They're as bewildered as you and I about the way that Starmer and Rachel Reeves are running this government in this country. They seem to be cack-handed in the extreme, and they don't just do stupid things, they repeat stupid things. They keep doing the wrong thing. And you don't need to be a trained economist to know that if you keep hitting employers with higher taxes, higher national insurance, more regulation on workers' rights and so on, that they're going to cease to employ quite so many people as they did. And indeed, some of them will go bust. So,
yeah.
You know, it's so counterproductive.
Well, they already are. Yeah. I mean, it's complete common sense. And it's like, how many times can you go on blaming Liz Truss? I mean, you know, Jeremy Hunt this morning, of course, who was a former Chancellor, said, I fixed all that within a couple of months. You know, you can't keep standing up and blaming that on what is happening now.
Liz Truss was a flash in the pan. It was over and done with almost immediately. Yeah. And the effects, which I think were in fact exaggerated largely by the Bank of England at the time, were cured and curbed and put back on an even keel within days, not weeks, months, and now 18 months or 2 years since Labour was on the verge of winning the last election. They have done nothing in preparation in opposition for the problems and challenges of being actually in power. And now they suddenly find that they're in real serious difficulties, and they're thrashing around with the opinion polls down to about 20%, a record low, trying to find a way of staving off the inevitable, which is defeat at the next general election.
But that is some time away. In between times, I mean, if I had £1 for every time I've read that, you know, Keir Starmer's going to go, when is he going to go?
Well, I suspect between now or maybe soon after the local elections, the budget the reception for the budget, which is going to be bad, I suspect, will be bad for Keir Starmer as well as for Rachel Reeves, because he has bolstered Number 10's economic unit in order to contribute to the planning for this budget. It's as much his budget as it is Rachel Reeves, but the real test will be the denouement at the local elections, when Reform almost certainly will sweep the board, Labour will be decimated, and it's quite possible that the Tories might start to pick up a little ground as well.
You know, and we both know, you know, whatever you think of Reform, Nigel Farage is a seasoned politician. He knows exactly how to speak to the people of Britain. And this week, you know, when he says things like, we're going to support Alarm Clock Britain, the people that wake up in the morning, perhaps while their neighbours' curtains remain closed until 11 a.m, still getting the same money as them, that resonates with people. And Labour are just sort of sleepwalking into not recognising that.
Yes, and I think that he's got a very good knack of finding what Tony Blair called eye-catching initiatives. This is a view of the hard-working working class, which is now Reform's base for voting, that they're doing all the work and other people are lying in bed. There was a trade union leader, engineering union leader, who said that his members were really furious when they got up for work and left the house at 7 o'clock and saw the houses across the street with the curtains closed because the people in there were not working and they were still in bed. That really does stir people up when they're having to pay more tax and all the other costs of going to work, and other people are going on benefits. So all of this, and none of which is being touched or addressed by this government, nor will it be for the whole of the time it has left. This is really giving Reform and Nigel Farage a terrific boost.
I mean, one of Tony Blair's eye-catching phrases or initiatives, of course, was education, education, education. So let's move on to the story of the sort of dumbing down, as it's being accused, of the national curriculum. Michael Gove, I mean, he sort of did a lot, I feel. I know he took on the unions. He did a lot, I feel, to try and improve education. Is this a step back?
Oh, a huge step back. And Michael Gove, indeed, perhaps the biggest single thing he ever achieved as a cabinet minister was to start shaking up the education process and putting education back into the classroom. And he lost his job because of the cowardice of David Cameron, who, because it was unpopular with teachers' unions and some parents, decided it was unsafe to keep him. And that was one of the biggest mistakes of many of the Cameron era. But the thing is that the teachers' unions have been on a long march since the 1960s, and their view is capture the minds of tomorrow's voters. Give me the child until he is 7, and I will give you the 18-year-old or now 16-year-old who will elect the next government.
Yes, I mean, I was saying earlier to former head teacher Tim Clark, I mean, I kind of like the idea of creative subjects being built up a bit. I do sort of feel that the old curriculum, you know, I remember learning about Oxbow Lakes. I don't think that piece of information has ever been useful to me ever since, although you never know. I do feel that there is an argument for modernising the national curriculum, but of course they always can't help themselves by putting in sort of things like climate change and, you know, stuff like that, that of course is sort of political nonsense in terms of kids can learn about climate change from the headlines. They don't need to learn about it in school.
And indeed diversity. I think all of this is left-wing propaganda dressed up as education. And I mean, at least you can still remember at the age of 35 about Oxbow Lakes. I think that at least stuck in your mind. That's what education is about. It's using your mind, making it retentive, it's making it elastic, tackling difficult subjects. Geography is a difficult subject, and that's what Oxbow Lakes comes under. So, you know, maths and sciences are the future for us. And if we don't have children growing up as scientists and people capable of doing hard jobs like that, we have no future in the economic world.
OK, well, Trevor, thank you very much. As ever, brilliant to talk to you, and hope you're enjoying your retirement. OK, we're going to go to a break now.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Thank you very much for your company and for all your messages. It's great. So I'm not just talking to myself here. Paul in Belfast has messaged in, the Trump panorama fake video is the last straw. I've just cancelled my BBC TV licence. Well, good luck with that, Paul. You'll be getting those haranguing letters constantly telling you that the van is in the area and they're going to be knocking on your door, etc. Who else have we got here? Mike from Medway. He's regarding teachers. We were talking about, obviously, the changes to the national curriculum and teachers' pay we were addressing there with Tim Clark. I've known several teachers, never met a poor one. and I think he means a poor one as in riches. They do all right, yeah, as I said, that is from Mike from Medway. I do think, though, in certain schools it is a pretty tough job. And Anthony has messaged in, hey Jane, just want to say welcome to Talk. You're doing a fantastic job on your first day. Oh, thank you, Anthony. That's very, very kind of you. OK, well, we're going to move on now. There's a couple of stories around today regarding the grooming gangs. Now, this is the story that, of course, never goes away. A couple of reports today. School governors told to dismiss grooming gangs' concerns. Whilst another report has said that human error may have led to grooming gangs investigations being dropped. That's a review. Now, we have on the line with us Rupert Lowe, MP for Great Yarmouth. Now, you've been highly vocal on the issue of grooming gangs in the past, Rupert, so probably both of these stories don't come as a surprise to you?
Well, I've been a bit more than vocal, Jane. Good morning, first of all. I don't think I've ever been on your show, and I don't think we've actually met each other.
It's the first time I've done it, so...
So I know. So, yeah, so hello there.
Hello.
Yes, no, I've been a little bit more than vocal. We've actually, as you probably know, set up a rape gang inquiry, a crowd-funded inquiry, which 20,000 people have donated to, a total amounting to about 600,000, which, when you juxtapose that against the J report, which I think cost the taxpayer 186 million, we're making 5p do the job of a pound. But we are working our way through it. We've got a fantastic team. Sammy Woodhouse is leading that team. We've got our hearing, which is going to happen in February, and we should have our report out by the end of March, beginning of April, which will be a proper barrister-written, detailed report. And the findings so far are pretty horrific. So we previously identified that this vileness had been happening, and these are Pakistani Muslim rape gangs, largely 95% of them. Some of them are Bangladeshis, and there are a few from other Afghanistan and places like that. But predominantly, it's a Muslim issue. It is the exploitation of young, white, working-class English girls. And we now have identified it's happening in 137 areas, which actually means it's happening in far more towns and cities than that. So the government, as you know, we shamed them into having or stating they were going to have a statutory inquiry. So far, using my yardstick of watch what the hands are doing, not what the mouth is saying, nothing has really happened. In fact, we know nothing's happened because they're still issuing sort of statements which largely contain verbal baby food and verbal diarrhea. So there's been no action, and I don't think the state wants action because from what we're seeing, this is a national scandal. I think it's going to identify that the police, the social services, local government, the NHS, almost every organ of the state has been turning a blind eye to this blot on our history for nearly 25 years. And
what, purely for politically correct reasons, not wanting to demonise?
I don't know the reasons, Jane. I suspect we now live in a society where, or we don't now, but I think we did for a long period of time, where people used to shout racism at every possible opportunity, and they used that to suppress the truth. People were frightened to actually deal with this issue because it probably does highlight that we've got a lot of communities across the country who haven't integrated with the rest of us. They don't respect our culture. They don't respect a lot of the things that we stand for. And yet the leaders of our country, and I put both the Tories and Labour in this category, have done precisely the square root of nothing, or diddly squat, to actually address the issues, to protect the decent citizens of this country. And indeed, they've allowed the whole basis of our culture and what we stand for to be undermined by this what I call undifferentiated, untargeted mass immigration, which has damaged the structure of Britain. And I think people can now see This morning we came out from our house in London before I went to Parliament. My wife had her headlights stolen from her car, which apparently are being used to grow drugs. So Sadiq Khan has reduced London.
That could be white people doing that as well. Just
of course,
to sort of
course. But
counteract.
I think it's probably part of the. Sadiq Khan has prevailed in my view over the decline of London. I used to live in London. It's not a shadow of its former self now. So. Look, I think...
Listen, I mean, obviously there's the old phrase, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I really felt that we were sort of getting to the point where the grooming gang story was out in the open. We were all being honest about it. We were getting somewhere. Then obviously the government inquiry fell at the first hurdle. The victims didn't trust it. They spent all those years not being listened to. And then again, they felt unsupported, which I find astonishing that they were made to feel that way. It defies belief. And now, of course, we've got a story this morning. School governors have been encouraged to dismiss concerns about grooming gangs as disinformation. It's still going on.
Well, it's happening everywhere, Jane. So our plan, and we're going to write a very hard-hitting report. We're not going to pull any punches. We're going to expose everybody. And ultimately, if we have some money left or people feel inclined to crowdfund further, we are intending to take private prosecutions out against those people who we think have perpetrated the worst failures in terms of protecting people they're supposed to be looking after. So we're on the warpath, and we are, when the government announced they were going to have a statutory inquiry, a lot of people said to me, you should stop yours and return the money. Let me reiterate, we are not going to stop ours because the government doesn't want an inquiry. This is a stinking, festering stain on our entire country. And as you say, it has to be outed, it has to be put into the sunlight, and it has to be disinfected. And if we don't do that, we can't really move on.
And very quickly, just on the other story about grooming gangs there, human error may have led to grooming gangs investigations being dropped. Is that feasible?
I think it's complete poppycock, and our, I think this is people getting nervous about what's rattling down the track. But from what we can see, this is an endemic problem. As you probably know, the intention was to silo the investigation into a few places. This is happening everywhere, Jane. This is a national scandal of immense proportion, and if people don't stand up and face up to it, then it's never going to be resolved. So we really need to all collectively, as you say, shine the light on this one and disinfect it.
Rupert Lowe, MP for Great Yarmouth, thank you very much for joining me this morning. I am back after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now then, in all the papers today, we see a rise Sir David Beckham getting his knighthood from the King Charles. I think it sort of divides people. I've seen quite a few comments from people sort of saying, what has he ever done? I don't share that view. I think that David Beckham is a good representative for this country. I think he loves this country. Obviously, he was the former captain of England for many years, was very emotional about being captain for his country. It meant a lot to him. I do remember him queuing to see the Queen after the coffin of the Queen, obviously lying in state after she died, not skipping the queue like some. I think, yeah, I mean, obviously there was that slight sort of weird situation with a private email that got leaked, which sort of suggested he might be doing things to angle for a knighthood. But you know what? Who doesn't? I can think of a lot fewer deserving people that have got them. So congratulations to David Beckham. And of course, what you see there is all the pomp of the monarchy, the stuff that people recognise. The stuff that sort of sustained it over centuries. But meanwhile, Prince William is doing a sterling job out in Brazil, shaking hands, this, that and the other. But I have to say, it's not getting massive coverage in the papers. I know there's a lot going on in the world, so that might be part of it. But he's very far back. And a certain columnist today in The Sun called Jane Moore, yes, it is I, has sort of said, well, look, maybe all this Prince Andrew damage, has it damaged the monarchy going forward? Is it making them unpalatable, less relevant for the younger generations going forward? Now, who better to answer these questions than my old royal correspondent mucker, Robert Jobson. He's got a book out which is being serialised at the moment. It's great stuff. It's called The Windsor Legacy, a royal dynasty of secrets, scandal and survival. Well, we know the scandal bit, but what about the survival? Morning, Robert. How are you?
Well, thanks, Jane. Yeah, very well.
What do you think about the future of the monarchy? I mean, talking about William, first of all, being at the back of the papers. I know he hasn't got Kate with him, and we remember from our days of being on the royal beat that, of course, it's a bit of a repeat of Charles, isn't it? Because when he was on his own, we were less interested than when he was with Diana.
I think he's doing a pretty good job out there trying to sell what he wants to sell, but it's not the first time he's done it. You know, this is a recurring theme. It's nothing really new. He now wants to, he's using Earthshot to promote this agenda of his. But ultimately, what you said earlier is it's true that the impact of both what the Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has done and has been accused of, and all the fallout from it has certainly had an impact. And then you've got the Harry's book and all the things that went on there, the attacks on the monarchy. Look, I think the younger generation are certainly less interested, certainly less feel that there should be more checks and balances. And if you lose the trust of the people, ultimately the monarchy is in jeopardy. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it only exists because it's there to serve the people. If it doesn't fit the bill, then eventually people are going to say, well, what's the point?
Well, that's sort of what I'm saying in my...
I think you're right. I mean, also, when you've now got the monarchy taking away, before, people say, you can't take away his title, he was born a prince, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, they've done it. They've done it themselves. Now, they may think that's cutting out the cancer, I don't know, but the reality is it shows it can be done. And people like the Monarchy Republic organisation and all these people will say, well, there are other people that, don't really, are not fit for purpose too. Why have we got Prince Harry being called Prince Harry and he doesn't do anything for the royal family?
Yeah, I mean, all of this is damaging, I feel, because, I think it was Queen Victoria, wasn't it, who said never complain, never explain. And the late Queen sort of did stick to that, but now it feels like they're complaining and explaining all over the place. You mentioned Harry there, he's always complaining. Obviously, explanations are needed over Prince Andrew's behaviour, and not just in terms of the allegations against him sexually, but also the allegations that there are about his financial dealings over the years. And I think when the public start to, you know, you sort of strip away the veneer of the mystique, and the public start to think, hang on, this is a dysfunctional family just like any other, so why are we expected to revere them?
Well, this is the point. I mean, you know, we've had all this issue going on with Prince Andrew and his relationships with very unsavoury characters, you know, appalling evil characters like Epstein. Now, you know, well, Prince Charles used, you know, when he was Prince with Diana, had Jimmy Savile was his marriage's guidance counsellor. He supported Bishop Ball. So you've got to look at these things and say that it's not just isolated. And if that is the case, there has to be, you know, a system in place where you can do something about it if they don't fit the bill. Now, the monarchy are now trying to deal with it themselves. We don't know what other information they've got. Maybe they've got more information than we've been shown. But it's always kept behind a gilded curtain, isn't it? We don't get the full facts. You don't get the, you know, on the freedom of information, you don't get access to the information at the Royals. It is all done with mirrors, as they say, and I think personally that this is beginning of maybe a failing, because the younger generation simply don't seem to be connected with them.
No, I mean, what do you feel the monarchy will look like when King William comes to the throne?
Well, in the book, I talk about how he wants to drastically reduce the amount of people working for the monarchy. Again, that may be seen as a positive thing, but that means the reach of the monarchy is not the same. So they're not, you know, you're not going to have the same amount of royals in doing the things in the community where, you know, they do get traction if they turn up at a hospital or they do an event. There's certainly a buzz about it, and there certainly helps raise money for charity, etc. But if you've got less of them doing stuff, then there's going to be less depth in what they actually achieve. And, you know, that may be what a smaller royalty, smaller monarchy that William wants. He's talking about royalty with a small r. Well, that may be what he wants, but will that necessarily be enough to sustain them going forward? I mean, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, and we should do a sort of a shout out, I suppose. Obviously, William and Kate, you know, they carry out duties. You've got Princess Anne, very, very hard-working. You've got Edward and Sophie. So it is still there, the kind of old school, the old school duty. But yeah, I mean, I've got younger kids, obviously, and I sort of said to them yesterday, what's your view on the royal family? And they just sort of, they were indifferent. They just sort of said, well, we don't really care.
And you cannot really blame them, because it doesn't impact upon their life. I mean, as I say, that I've worked, you know, with a journalist charity, do stuff with Sophie Wessex, you know, the Duchess of Edinburgh she's now, and it definitely increases the charitable donations, definitely increases the interest in the event, etc. But is that going to be enough? I think that the most important thing is they've got the King. I think has done a very good job in terms of the transition, but you know, has been hampered by the fact he's living with cancer. I think that a lot is going to depend on how William and Catherine take this forward. I think William is quite a dynamic character. I think that he's shown himself to be pretty ruthless too, and I think he realises he's going to have to make the institution fit for the 21st century. I do think that places like Australia and New Zealand will no longer have them as head of state. I can't see that carrying on indefinitely, but eventually that will change, and it'll just be focused more on this country.
Do you think they're going to become sort of more like celebrities? I mean, in a way, Harry and Meghan have sort of set them up for that, haven't they? They've sort of moved to America and become celebrities by any other name. Is that's what's going to happen to the royal family in this country?
I think cost is a big issue. I mean, and also what people perceive as waste, and you know, the amount of houses. You know, William is talking about, you know, resolving the homeless crisis. He had 3 houses, and they're not small. You know, these sort of things don't necessarily sit very well with the younger generation, who are possibly not going to get on the property ladder to, you know, maybe never at all, maybe never get on the property ladder, maybe not to their 40s. So it doesn't really sit well with the younger generation that haven't got that sort of sense of entitlement that maybe the royal family certainly appeared to have. I think that William will actually try to connect more and more, and I think he is talking the talk and actually dealing with issues that really do matter to people, the environment and things like that.
Okay.
But it's whether people have got that, that desire for the pomp and circumstance. It worked very well quite recently with Trump. That big state banquet seemed to go down very well with all those that were involved with it. But
the trappings.
How much longer? How much it goes on.
All right. Well, Robert Jobson, thank you very much. Watch this space on the Royals. We've had quite a few messages in. Morning, Jane. This is from Sally. How can William be promoting his green credentials when acres of rainforest have been cut down to accommodate this COP event and hundreds of people have travelled by jet to get there? It's total hypocrisy. Nick from Loughborough. Jane, mega-rich sportsmen shouldn't be awarded knighthoods. This is talking about David Beckham, for being successful at their game. Usually these people connect themselves to charities for their own kudos, and their massive donations have less impact on their pockets than a pensioner's £5 donation, yet the pensioner gets no credit. Now, if you would like to message in or call in, you can call 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk to 87222 with your message, obviously, as well. You can follow and message us on X at talkTV, and if you want to use WhatsApp with a short voice note or a message, 0344 499 1000. We are back after this.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now. Big news coming this December.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, in the studio with me, I'm going to try and keep a straight face because I've known Andy Willman for a very, very long time, but I'm going to try and be professional when I interview him about his new book. It is called Mr. Willman's Motoring Adventure, Top Gear, Grand Tour and 20 Years of Magic and Mayhem. And I did a little skim through it yesterday, and I must say it was incredibly funny. And I'm not just saying that, but let's just start with, you're sort of like the Yoko Ono, aren't you, to Jeremy Clarkson?
Yeah, that great one. Yeah,
the John Lennon.
Of all the things, I'm Yoko. I scream.
Except I don't think you've ever been in a bed together, have you?
No, or in a bed with cameras and everything.
You've been in a dormitory together, though.
We did, Bed of Six.
Now,
Bed of Six was very important to us.
Well, tell me about, because I know that you guys went to school, but actually I didn't realise quite how much you went to school, even though you were in different years.
Well, once you go to school, you kind of got to stay there.
No, but you bonded.
We did.
Tell us how.
We did. So, okay, when I went there, I was like 2 years younger than him, and that is a gulf. If you know what school's like, that's like continents. But when I arrived, I had this I was born with this like affliction, which was like nerve and muscle endings that didn't connect very well. And you couldn't, from the outside, I looked normal, but the build-up the housemaster had given before I arrived is like, oh, this kid's coming, we don't know, would be nice to him. And the
He's got this neurological condition.
Yeah, as soon as you say neurological, and nobody could really be bothered in the 70s to describe anything about it. HR, forget it. So there I was, and I walked in, and you could see, like, people going, oh. And then after lunch, I met this kid who was, like, the worst hair, curly hair, like a helicopter had dropped it on his head. And he came over and he was like, so you're, like, ill then? And I was like, well, yeah, it's a nerve and muscle thing. And he went, oh, I thought that they'd be wheeling in a fish tank with a brain in it with, like, a school cap on it. But you could tell he was disappointed that it wasn't like that. So I got a sense of his hyperbole immediately. And then we got on because I was off games for life. He wasn't, so he had to go and do it. And I've never seen such a tragic figure on a football pitch or whatever. I think I say in the book it's like a giraffe attached to a fire hose, because it's just shocking watching him bumble around. But we bonded in getting into trouble, because how else do you make your name if you're not going to, like, get into the football team and you're not going to get any work prizes and that sort of stuff? So we bonded on getting into trouble. And when I was putting stuff down in the book, I sort of realised that the way we got into trouble informed the way we got into trouble on Top Gear, which was always, we tried to do it with some charm, until obviously we didn't.
I mean, Jeremy has always said to me, oh, I got expelled from school, that's his. But when you say you were naughty at school, tell me, like, one of the things that you and he would have done. Okay,
this is going to sound so privileged nonsense. There'll be people vomiting when they're here. So it's a boarding school. It's in a village in Repton, and Repton has got a sort of a Viking cross, stone cross in the middle of the village, because it was the capital of Mercia. Who knew? So one evening in our boarding house, we find in the attic all the housemaster's wives' clothes in, like, trunks and stuff. So we're like, these need an outing. So we go down on Saturday night, climb this ancient monument and dress it up, twin set, hat, the whole lot. And then 500 boys are going to church in the morning, and they go past this thing dressed up. And we're like, we did that. We told everybody we did that. So, like I say, and it was, it's, we're hardly like rebels without a cause, but it was kind of charming.
But it was the foundations of the relationship.
Yeah, you put a teacher's car, you pick it up and put it in the school hall, and then stand next to the teacher the next day going, who's done that? Can we help you shift it back?
So that sort of sustained you through school. Now, you're very sort of self-deprecating in the book. You do talk about sort of insecurity when you were young, and it sort of almost feels like Jeremy buoyed you up along the way.
He did.
And you sort of say throughout the book, you're very sort of like, Jeremy gave me this opportunity, Jeremy gave me that opportunity, I wouldn't be where I am without Jeremy.
Yeah, that's true.
But he has said to me before, I would not be where I am without Andy Willman. Do you accept that? With your self-deprecation?
I do now, because we found a way of working where we dovetailed and then complemented each other. So I always sort of tried, I mean, the best analogy I think is that he is the tip of the arrow. He gets the light bulb moments. He's the one who, like when we brought Top Gear back, when I met him in the pub, and Jane Root, controller of BBC Two, had said, like, no Top Gear until it's a better show. He'd written down about 60, 70% of what the show was going to be. We didn't know it was going to be like a world beater or anything, but he literally, you know, if the old one was a vase, he smashed it against the wall and went, right, that's smashed now, so it ain't coming back, so we've got no choice but to go forward. And I'd be the sort of person who'd try and paint the vase or like go, well, then move it a little bit. I've got that kind of timidity, but once you accept where his head is, I'm very good at kind of executing. In the mob, I would have been chief executioner, the enforcer. I'm very good at carrying it out.
He's a disruptor.
And then creatively, we have a sort of thing where on a shoot, in a run to shoot, he's in charge because he's got the best editorial. As I've said many times, he's a tabloid journalist, not a TV presenter. That's the root of him.
Yeah, he prides himself on that, doesn't he?
And it is. He always sees that, and I'm not so good at that. But in the edits, I am very good because I love telling stories. So it's like, leave me alone in peace, and I will do the story that is right.
Yeah, I'm in the edit will be on your gravestone, won't it?
Well, the gravestone will be in the edit. Yeah, it'll be in an edit suite.
So explain, anyone who's watching who doesn't understand about the edit, how important is the edit?
The edit is the place where you take all the hundreds of hours of rushes that they shoot and then shape it into an hour and a half or what have you. And you need to be a bit dictatorial. You need to understand nuance and what they're trying to do, and you need to make your story like run as a captivating story. And I think where we got good with Top Gear and Grand Tour was we did make good narratives. They were like movies, little movies, and we were very...
And you're good at story.
Yeah, and I was very disciplined about... I went on a screenwriting course and I picked up the what's going on. About how a good script works, and obviously we're not a script, but you pick up the principles and then do it, and also because I'm inside Jeremy's head, not in bed, but I know what works.
Yeah.
The other thing that's important is the whole show's based on self-deprecation, taking the mick. Yeah. They look like clowns. They all trust me to do that right.
Yes.
Whereas I think in someone else's hands...
So they can be free while they're filming, knowing that in the edit you will... I mean, we all know why Top Gear came to an end, Stakegate, etc. But even if Stakegate hadn't happened, what would that show in its form then still be showing on the BBC? Because it was quite politically incorrect, wasn't it? Which made it very watchable.
I think we'd have been all right with that, because I think if you watch the Farm Show now, he's still politically incorrect. You know, I just think we went away on the Grand Tour and we just became very professional at what we did, but you're kind of, it's a sort of leave of absence while you're doing that. Whereas Top Gear, you know, we had our news section every week, so we do speak about what's going on in the world. And now he's back on the farm. He is speaking about what's going on in the world. So that never left, and it's all allowed. And like I say, apart from the times when we screwed up, we walked the line really nicely. So, yeah, that show would be, I think it would be allowed, but it would have to be us. Because we took stewardship of it. And that's, you know, when poor old Freddie had that terrible crash, and people go, will Top Gear ever come back? I don't think it will, because I don't think anybody at the BBC feels like they've got ownership of the show.
Right, because you had a terrible crash as well with Richard Hammond.
And there were different times. So you've got Richard, like one thing is his crash was like a movie, you know, it was dramatic, 288 miles an hour, fastest crash ever in a car, that kind of thing. But the vibe back then, I did say vibe, didn't I? The mood back then was, he's alive, he's coming back, yay! You know, it was very much celebratory from all sides. And whereas Freddie's thing was a terribly drawn out, injury-ridden thing, and the poor man had to be left alone. But it knocked the stuffing out of everybody else, whereas with us it was like, yay, we're back, sort of thing. Very different moods.
So when, I mean, you were a BBC man through and through, and Jeremy lost his job, you kind of you left in
Quickly
solidarity, as did James May and Richard Hammond. How soon was it before you came up with the Grand Tour thing, and how did that happen?
Well, we had a meeting at Jeremy's flat, so there's a big ashtray in the middle, and then we had that meeting, and we didn't know what we were going to do, but we just knew, like, we knew we would still have petrol in the tank, so to speak, in terms of editorial. But we didn't know where to go. Like, Sky didn't want us, Channel 4 didn't want us. We didn't know where to go, so we thought, oh, I wonder if the Americans want us. And then luckily, an American agent, they'd read in Variety, you know, sacked, fired, and they just see opportunity. So they're on the phone. And Netflix was big, and Amazon was trying to make its way up. And Amazon needed a big, can I use the phrase oven ready? We'll have to,
yeah,
won't we?
Why not?
Yep.
You've said it.
Oven ready
it's
show.
Out there.
Yep. That was like, you know, they were stars globally, yada, yada, yada. And they wanted to launch Amazon Prime, so it was a fit. And then we signed the deal. They paid us a lot, but we were so busy to look at all the noughts, we didn't look at like the date we had to be on air, and we were like, oh, bugger, like, we've got to do this. So it was a scramble.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, it's great, and you're now working on Clarkson's Farm, so that can be the next book. That can be the follow-up.
That's his turf. That's his turf.
But Top Gear and Grand Tour, all the gossip. If you're a bit of a petrol head, and even if you're not, actually, it's really funny. There you go, Mr. Willman's motoring adventure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming in. Okay, and don't forget you can call in 0344 499 1000. We are now going to a break, and for the news. After this, we will be back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
and welcome back. A little bit of breaking news for you here. Sky News is reporting that, you remember the Iranian national who returned to the UK after being deported to France and then came back again. Not a very successful policy. Came back again on the 19th of September. Came back again. So came on the 19th of September, came back, deported on 19th of September, came back again on the 18th of October, again via a small boat. Where does he get the money to pay them twice? I do not know. But anyway, it's understood he has now been removed for a second time. So let's see if he comes back again. Who knows? I have got Peter Cardwell in the studio with me, talk presenter, political commentator. We're going to have a little talk about PMQs, but we're going to throw to it first, where David Lammy is standing in for Sir Keir Starmer.
To those still in hospital, and pay tribute to the brave actions of the public and the police. Now, Mr. Speaker, overnight, the father of the girl assaulted in Epping by Hadish Gabatu, the illegal immigrant, released by accident, said the government had failed them relentlessly. Now, I confess, I'm surprised the Deputy Prime Minister hasn't already apologised. So I'm going to give him an opportunity now. Will he apologise to the family concerned?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, it's great to see the Honourable Gentleman in his place. I had expected to see the Shadow Justice Secretary, but nevertheless, I'm pleased to see the Honourable Gentleman. He must have missed the debate, because in the debate, of course, I said sorry for the anxiety caused whilst Kibatu was at large, and I repeat that, and it's hugely important that Dame Lynn Owens now gets to the bottom of what has happened with her further investigation.
James Cartledge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Watching the interview last night, I have to say it was absolutely heartbreaking. And I have to say, Mr. Speaker, I do think he owes it to offer an apology here on the floor of the House. But he should have done that at the start of his remarks, Mr. Speaker. These are very serious matters, Mr. Speaker, which is why I want to ask him a further very important question. Can he reassure the House that since Kibatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, the House is thankfully quiet, so I'm surprised the Honourable Gentleman didn't hear me when I said that of course I apologise and I'm sorry for the anxiety caused. But look, let me just remind him that he was a Justice Minister that allowed our prisons to get to this state in the first place. And it's now for us to fix the mess that we've got into. It's important that Dame Lynn Owens can now continue her work and understand what is happening. He knows that early release has begun under their watch in 2021.
Mr. Speaker, these are extremely serious crimes that we are talking about. I'm going to ask him the question again. Can he reassure the House that since Kibatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison? It's a very specific question for him to answer.
Deputy Prime Minister.
After his release, I put in place the toughest checks we've ever had in the prison system. It is important that Lynn Owens is able to get to the bottom of her work. I suspect there'll be more checks and balances we need to do. What we inherited was a complicated system that they set up, letting people out on the sly. That's part of the problem, and we're trying to fix it.
Mr. Speaker, he's the Justice Secretary. He's responsible for the justice system. He needs to take responsibility, and I'm asking him a straight question. And I'm going to repeat it once more for the avoidance of doubt, because he didn't answer it twice. He's here to answer questions. Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison? It's a clear question. Can he give an answer?
Deputy Prime Minister. Get a grip, man. I know I'm the Justice Secretary. That's why I'm at the dispatch box, also as Deputy Prime Minister. We know that. I'm not going to pray in aid. Dame Anne Owens is a former Deputy Commissioner in London, head of the NCA. It is for her to get to the bottom of that work. Of course, we know that there have been spikes since 2021 under his watch. When did he come to this House and apologise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of government is to take...
I want to hear both. Quiet. James Cartledge.
Mr. Speaker, it's getting noisier now, so just in case he didn't hear me. He's the Justice Secretary. Can he reassure the House that since...
Order. I will have no gestures from the balcony. Let me reassure you, don't gesture to me. It's not a wise decision. This is important. Prime Minister's questions, all our constituents are listening.
People in Epping and right across the country want to know the answer, Mr. Speaker. So I'm going to ask him again. He's the Justice Secretary. Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison? Can he answer the question?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I've got to tell you, I spent 14 years in opposition and I did a hell of a lot better than he's just done. I have answered the question. Under their watch, prisons were in a mess. Suicides went up. Prison officers cut. 20,000 neighbourhood polices lost. We've deported more in the last year than they deported in the last 5 years. Please, I'm not going to take any lecture from the honourable gentleman.
Mr. Jewis and Mr. Stafford, you test my patience each week. Today's not the day to test my patience. We do have quite a bank holiday, so I certainly wouldn't want to be testing it at the moment. James Cartledge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The public are extremely concerned about what happened in the Kabatu case. They want to know there won't be a repeat. So I'm putting to him a very clear question about his responsibilities. I repeat, can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison? Can he answer the question?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm looking forward to being up against the member for Newark next time. In 25 years in this House, I've not witnessed a more shameful spectacle, frankly, than what the party opposite left in our justice system. Their criminal negligence on his watch as a former Justice Minister. They left our prisons on the brink of collapse entirely, threatening to allow offenders to run wild on our streets. He knows that. Rape victims waiting years for their day in court. He knows that. Neighbourhood policing decimated, leaving our people feeling unsafe in their communities, and they haven't learned a thing. We are tackling knife crime, that's why it's falling. 13,000 more bobbies we are putting on the streets, kicking out 5,000 foreign criminal offenders. I've got to say to the honourable gentleman, he should do better.
Jonathan Blash. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent, Georgia Hart.
Well, a nice, calm, pleasant little PMQs there. Peter Cardwell is with me. It looks like James Cartledge got under David Lammy's skin there.
100%. Lammy lost the run of himself at the end there. He was really, really annoyed. He made a number of references to the fact he wasn't up against Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, as he thought he was going to be. He said in 25 years he'd never had such a bad spectacle. And all James Cartledge did over most of his questions, over 6 questions, was A, ask for an apology, which hasn't been delivered to the family of the 14-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted by Hadish Kabatu, And secondly, asking, are there any asylum-seeking migrants who are in prison who've been released by mistake? We know that in a year, under Labour's watch, 262 people have been released. So this was calm, it was measured, it was controlled from James Cartledge. Someone who wasn't calm, someone who wasn't measured, someone who wasn't controlled, and someone who wasn't wearing a poppy was David Lammy.
Yeah, one of our callers, Jason in Lincoln. Calamity Lammy currently answering PMQs, the only one not wearing a poppy. But what was David Lammy's answer there? Is it that he didn't know?
He doesn't know.
Or is it that he knows and he doesn't want to say?
No, he doesn't know the answer. He doesn't have it in front of him. And actually, when you're preparing for things like these kind of question and answer sessions, which I prepared ministers for when I was a special advisor, you've always got to think, what are the worst questions that can be asked? What are the hostile questions that can be asked? And clearly, Hadish Kabatu, big justice issue, massive issue for the prison service, huge screw up for the prison service. Clearly, a follow-up from James Cartledge was very likely. James Cartledge, former Justice Minister himself.
Repeatedly followed up.
Exactly.
I mean, is there an argument also that David Lammy doesn't know, and also he doesn't want to say, no, it hasn't happened, because there's also a very high chance that it has?
Yes, there is a high chance that it has.
And he doesn't want to get caught out.
Exactly, and there's one of these people released almost every day. So the question he will then be going to his officials and saying is, why didn't I have that in my briefing pack? Why wasn't I prepared for that question? He's clearly very angry. And interestingly, he talked about the fact that he put up with 14 years of the Conservatives. He said he'd been in the House for 25 years. And really, as time went on, David Lammy just got more and more annoyed. I thought he lost control there, as he sometimes does. He got very angry towards the end, whereas James Cartledge, cool as a cucumber.
We've got Paul Richards on the line, former Labour Party Special Advisor. Hi, Paul. That was a very ill-tempered PMQs by any standards.
Well, hello to you both. I think it was the B team being put in, wasn't it? It wasn't a vintage performance. I disagree with Peter's analysis a little bit. I think that it was a poor performance on both sides, actually, to be absolutely honest. And I'm pretty astonished that James Cartledge used up all of his questions on this one issue, because the Rachel Reeves statements yesterday on tax rises, you might have thought that would be a stronger area for the Tories to go in on, or even the result from New York overnight in the mayoral election, or even the unfolding tragedy in Sudan. There were sort of some very hot button issues going on in the world, and yet he used all of his questions on this one topic, which I think Lammy just sort of went, well, it's your fault. You were a justice minister when these people started being let out, and it meant that it was a bit of a score draw, I would say.
Paul, do you feel that the public get frustrated when they see this, that they see questions being wasted, or do you feel that Lammy should have been held to account? If you're not going to answer a question, it is a bit of a standard procedure to keep asking it until they do.
Well, I think the problem is that it is one of those questions you can't answer, because presumably, in logic, the answer must be yes, there are other cases. I don't know, but that's just the logic of the
So
numbers.
why didn't he say that?
But he can't say that out loud, because that becomes a big government announcement, and therefore, the Tories have won. So he obfuscates the answer. Then he has to say at the end, well, I've answered the question, when he plainly hasn't. And of course that means that the public are frustrated, because there are so many other issues they probably would like to know the answers to as well. And I mean, I've never liked the gladiatorial style of Prime Minister's questions. It's not very illuminating, and it doesn't show our Parliament. So much of the work of our Parliament is deliberative and collaborative, and this is obviously a clash, which I think makes us all look pretty bad. But I think to use up all 6 on one topic when there are so many other issues in the world.
Peter's shaking his head. I want to come back to Peter on that.
But it won't be the first time we've disagreed.
Well, and it won't be the last. It won't be the last, Paul. But yes, and good to see you wearing a poppy, unlike David Lammy. Paul actually was selling poppies the last time I saw him at Victoria Station, bumped into him, which is great volunteering from Paul. But no, he's wrong. He's wrong, because David Lammy was absolutely right to be questioned on these 2 issues. And it's 2 really basic things that go to the heart of his competence as Justice Secretary. Have you apologised to the family of the victim of Hadish Kabatu? Well, no, he's done it on the floor of the House. Have you? That didn't happen last week. Has it happened since then? Well, no, it hasn't. He said he's now apologising on the floor of the House. Pick up the phone, man. It's dead easy. Just get in touch with that family. Secondly,
why is that not happening, do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a really basic thing to do. Now, politicians need to sort of actively say to officials, I want to do this. It's not something officials, I used to work in the Ministry of Justice, it's not something they will come to you to say, and they don't like really politicians speaking to victims directly because there is a process. But if I were David Lammy, this is so clear. You're up at PMQs, it's such a clear thing to do. And I mean, the thought that he's going to ask about Mandami and New York, like that's irrelevant to British politics, I would argue at this point anyway, certainly irrelevant to PMQs. And also Rachel Reeves did so much damage to yourself yesterday that I don't think the Conservatives even needed to ask about that. And all you're going to get from David Lammy if you ask about Rachel Reeves is, well, wait until the budget, we can't speculate. So he knows he's going to get those kind of answers. So this is actually something that James Cartledge went for. Paul says, erroneously, I think, that everybody looked bad. I actually think James Cartledge, in his quite controlled, gentlemanly, almost old school way, just being persistent, actually won for the Tories today. I wasn't expecting him to. James Cartledge isn't a brilliant Commons performer, but actually in contrast to Lammy, who really lost his temper there, I think James Cartledge comes out of it very well.
Paul, in your former role, would you advise David Lammy to be human, if you like, and pick up the phone to the girl's family?
I mean, I probably would. I think empathy goes an awful long way in politics, and it is about those relationships. Just to point on what Peter said there, though, this is not justice questions. You know, this is Prime Minister's questions, and both are deputising for their leaders, for the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. So to go just purely on justice, I think was a mistake.
But Cartledge could have gone on defence, though. He could have, by that lot, he could have gone on defence. He could have gone on anything. It's not just if he was a Shadow Justice Secretary and went on justice, I would agree with you, Paul. But he's a Shadow Defence Secretary. He could have gone on anything.
What he should have done, that's my point. He should have ranged across a range of topics.
Why?
Because those are the things that the public want to know. And just to bang on about the same issue when you're not going to get an answer. I think it was a waste of his opportunity. I don't suppose he's going to get asked to do this again, actually.
We should note David Lammy has just put on a poppy, actually, so it was obviously a mistake.
Well, of course it was a mistake. I imagine it must have fallen off on his way to sit down. I mean, he's not a deliberate snub, is it? It's just something that he should have done. Mind you, that's the sort of thing that there's a parliamentary private secretary sitting right behind him whose job it is to make sure he's got a poppy on. So
but again, it goes back to the absolute basics here. The absolute basics of, have you apologised to the victim's family and potentially to the victim? Do you know what's going on in your department? Do you know what's going on in the prison service, and have they released any others, and how many have been released since Hadish Kabati? And are you wearing a poppy? I mean, those three things are all three really basic things that should have happened today to David Lammy, but yet again he failed.
Paul, final word.
Well, I think he could have been better briefed. I think the poppy thing is obviously just a mistake. It must have fallen off, but I don't think he lost his temper. He's a passionate man. He needs to cross his brief. Absolutely not.
No, he did look to me like he was rattled. Let's put it that way. Let's call it that. Okay, Peter Cardwell, thank you very much, and big thank you to Paul Richards too. Don't forget, you can have your say. You can call 0344 499 1000, or you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. I will be back after this.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back this afternoon with me, Jane Moore, sitting in for Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thoroughly enjoying myself so far, so thank you for all of your messages. I'm going to be taking some calls as well later on in the show, but you can call 0344 499 1000 on any of the topics that we've been talking about today. And we're just going to move on now sort of back to the Rachel Reeves. I don't know what the BBC website have described it as an unusual pre-budget speech. Well, that's one word for it, I suppose. Word salad is another description. I still don't really know what she said in amongst it all, but perhaps somebody could throw some light on that. Is Roger Bootle, the economist. He's on the line now. Now, Roger, top economists are predicting that she's set to hit middle-class earners with a 60 billion tax bomb that could send Britain into a, quote, fiscal doom loop. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think the words are a bit exaggerated, but the logic is, I think, correct. And whether it's 60 billion or 30 or 40 billion, I'm not sure. We are in a fiscal mess, no doubt about it.
And what are we going to do about it? What would you do about it if you were Chancellor?
Well, this is where I think economic factors run up against politics. There's no doubt in my mind about what needs to be done. That is, the government has got to slash public spending and not put up taxes. But it's difficult actually for any government to do that, and it's particularly difficult for this government to do it. It is a Labour government after all. It's found before its backbenchers revolted against previous quite small cuts. So although this is what I would advocate, big cuts in government spending, I suspect we're going to get virtually none of that, and I think probably all of the burden is going to fall upon tax riders.
I mean, the NHS, it's a bit of a sacred cow. It gets held up by every government. They all seem to feel that it's untouchable. But anyone who has used the NHS, and I've seen it used recently, I mean, it was fantastic with a friend of mine. It saved her life. It was incredible. But on the other end, with my elderly mother, you know, we were there for 9 hours. I saw so much inefficiency. Why do successive governments fail to just say this needs root and branch reform?
Well, I think you've put your finger on it, really. I mean, there are some really wonderful bits of the NHS. I've had good treatment myself, and there are some appalling bits of it. You called it a sort of sacred cow. The late Nigel Lawson said that it was the nearest thing that the English came to a religion. Belief in the NHS. But I think probably the scales are falling from many people's eyes. Many people like you have had experience of treatment that isn't really quite good enough. They're becoming increasingly aware that in other countries it's better. This notion that the NHS is the envy of the world is complete and utter tosh. If it was ever true, I mean, why aren't other countries copying us? You must be joking. For a long time, I think this debate was marred by a sort of knee-jerk reaction of thinking that, oh, well, if you don't want the NHS, you're suggesting we have the American system. And I, for one, wouldn't go anywhere near the American system. I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. It's expensive and it delivers, on average, appalling health outcomes for the American people. But that's not the only alternative. We look across the channel, France is a better system than us. Germany has too. The example I particularly like is Holland, where they had a system rather like ours, and in, I think it was 2006, they changed to a system based on social insurance. I think we do a lot worse than copying Holland.
I mean, Kemi Badenoch, Conservative leader, described Rachel Reeves' speech yesterday as one long waffle bomb, which she said has left business leaders none the wiser. I mean, the business world is increasingly unstable, isn't it? Because nobody's making any decisions because they don't know what's coming on November the 26th.
Well, I think they've got a pretty good idea what's coming, actually, namely higher taxes. It's just a question of which particular ones and by how much. There's no doubt that increased taxes will hit business confidence and business spending, as well, of course, as households. Now, there should be an offset to all this, in that why are taxes going up? Well, because we've got all this spending going on in the economy. There's that, so there'll be some increases in public spending coming through. But the attempt to tighten the budget, which is what she's trying to do, will undoubtedly hit demand in the economy, tend to weaken immediate growth performance. Now, one possible offset to that, and we'll get news on this immediately tomorrow, is there could be more chance now of an interest rate cut.
Nick in London would like to join our conversation. Hi, Nick.
Yes, hello there. You were talking about the NHS and calling it a sacred cow. Well, saying others did. That may be true in Westminster and mainstream media, but I don't think people do. I think people see it for what it is. And sometimes it's very, very good, but sometimes it's blooming awful. And if you ever take the chance to look at the annual reports of your local NHS trust, just find out how much the senior executives pay themselves. For a start, I mean, mine, Croydon University Trust, last time I looked, a couple of years ago, the chief medical officer was taking home £750,000 a year, half in pension, half in a salary. £750,000 a year. That was,
yeah.
And I'm fairly sure it's fairly samey, elsewhere in the other trusts. I mean, why, for example, does England need, and it's got 225 different NHS trusts?
Yeah, Nick. I mean, I think you make an excellent point, and I think you're spot on. I think actually, when you look outside the Westminster bubble and listen to the British public, they are saying we would be happy with root and branch reform of the NHS. They love the NHS, but anyone who uses it can see where the problems are and that they need to be fixed. Thank you very, very much for the call, and also thank you very much to economist Roger Bootle for joining us this afternoon. We will be back after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, as you might imagine, a lot of you messaging in about David Lammy and his missing poppy, which of course then magically appeared. Who says this? Who's this? Harvey. Afternoon, Jane. You're doing a great job. Good debates. Thank you very much. I think Lammy has shown a complete lack of empathy. If he does contact the family now, it will be because he's been forced to. And he also said, I would love someone to ask where his poppy is. And of course, Gareth has pointed out that the poppy now seems to have appeared, but apparently it's on the wrong side. But anyway, at least it's there. So thank you for those messages. Over to New York now, where socialist Zohran Mamdani has been elected as New York City's first Muslim mayor. Now, he's a left-wing politician who's stoked controversy with pro-Palestinian views, but he has swept to victory in the city, no doubt about it. One of the things that he was running on were sort of promises such as free buses, free childcare, city-run supermarkets. All sounds marvellous. Adam Coleman, columnist at the New York Post, joins me now. Morning, or afternoon, should I say, Adam. Does he have a magic money tree?
Yeah, the tax dollar is his money tree. I mean, whether he's going to do any of those things that you stated is going to be a different story. You know, sometimes people make big, ambitious statements, but there's still some bureaucracy that's at play. And on top of that, you know, he can't spend money that is not there. I mean, they have a budget they have to stick to. City budgets are different than, let's say, Donald Trump wanting to spend more money, and they just print more money. So we'll see what actually happens, if it actually goes even that far. But I do think that this is a warning for the New York City. And I know you said it's a sweeping victory, but something to keep in mind, most New York City residents didn't vote for him. This was a three-way race. And if it wasn't for the ego of Cuomo, Mamdani may not have won.
So because he's an independent and he took away some of the vote?
Yeah, even more so. It's not, I have no problem with people running as independent. The thing is that Cuomo ran as a Democrat initially. He lost against Mamdani by almost 13%. And so then he decided to run as an independent to stay in the race, as if he's going to somehow overcome those odds. And all he did was take away from Sliwa, who had a chance. And so then you're left with the guy who sent your grandparent to the grave because he didn't handle COVID properly. You have a career politician who's a very slimy guy, in my opinion. Or you have someone like Sliwa, who's a New York City legend, who may have a chance. And so who knows which direction people were going because Cuomo decided to stay in the race.
Well, you mentioned there, of course, that he's made all these promises and it depends on money as to whether they get seen. We're seeing a lot of that over here at the minute. We're seeing our current Prime Minister, who made lots of promises that he's having to break for that very reason. You know, when you get inside and start opening the cupboard doors and realising that there's no money. What challenges is Mamdani going to face running the city?
Well, one, he's going to face internal city bureaucracy. It's not, while he may have won as mayor, everyone that is within the city is not someone who's a sycophant to the mayor, no matter who the mayor is. He will bring his cronies in. Every mayor does. There's always a little bit of corruption that's at play. They hire their family members, close allies, and things of that nature. But there are still people who are within the city who are going to push back. Also, New York City isn't its own country, so he can't do things that are unconstitutional. And there will be eyeballs from the State Department. There will be eyeballs from all over the country, lawsuits at play, if he decides to do something that is unconstitutional.
And of course, he's got the President of the United States sort of putting out messages about him, saying that any Jewish person who votes for Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani is quote unquote stupid. So he clearly doesn't have the support of Donald Trump, who actually, I believe, came out in support of his old enemy Cuomo.
Yeah, that's actually true. And I think while I don't agree with using that type of quote from Trump, his pragmatism to go towards Cuomo is basically do whatever you can to not elect a socialist into office. So I understand it from that perspective. However, this was a victory based off of bad choices, in my opinion. Cuomo was always a bad choice. And Sliwa is not necessarily a bad choice, but he is running as a Republican within the city of New York. And that air, that oxygen was taken away by Cuomo. So he didn't have a chance to have a competition. It wasn't a two-way race like it most of the time is. This is a matter of Cuomo taking away the oxygen from Sliwa, and then people looking at, well, I don't know, the guy I'm not too familiar with politically, the guy I really don't like because he messed things up and left in disgrace, or this new guy who maybe has some quote unquote new ideas. So that's what people were faced with.
Okay, well, it remains to be seen how he does and whether or not the city empties of rich people, as some people have predicted. We will see. Adam Coleman, columnist at the New York Post. Thank you very much. We're going to be taking your calls and messages after this. Don't forget you can call in on 0344 499 1000, or you can text the word TALK and your message to 87222. You can follow and message us on X at talkTV. We will be back just after this.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now a little bit more breaking news that sort of beggars belief, to be honest, considering we've just seen David Lammy at PMQs refusing to answer a question about whether any other foreign prisoner had been mistakenly released. And here we have breaking news that another one is on the run after being mistakenly released in error from HMP Wandsworth in South London. Now, this happened on the 29th of October, which is just 5 days after the high-profile release of Hadush Kubatu that they were just talking about in PMQs. That was, of course, from HMP Chelmsford. It was also 2 days after David Lammy announced enhanced checks on prisoner releases. It wasn't actually reported until the 4th of November, so that was this Tuesday, 6 days after he was mistakenly released. So I'm not quite sure why that delay has happened. He's a 24-year-old Algerian man, and Sky News is reporting that he was serving time for trespass with an intent to steal, but has previously committed sexual offences. Well, on the line now, I have Vanessa Frake. She's former prison governor at HMP Wormwood Scrubs. Good morning, Vanessa. How on earth is this happening?
Good morning, Jane. Well, you said it yourself, didn't you? It beggars belief. A, that they didn't realise till 6 days later. B, that David Lammy clearly doesn't appear to know anything about it. And C, how on earth this happened, I have no idea. It's very worrying, and another systematic error of our prisons that we can't seem to hold people in custody.
Is it as I've heard prison staff or former prison office staff sort of saying that as a result of the cuts, there are a lot of rookie officers. They've claimed that things like the Kubatu release wouldn't have happened if it had been a very experienced officer. So they're getting rookies, people that are calling in sick, getting agency workers. Do you think that's part of the problem?
I think it's far more deeper than that. I think it's years of non-investment, high turnovers of staff, the inability to keep staff, training, rundown buildings that are no longer fit for purpose. And I think that, we have to look very closely at our prison service to understand why. If somebody is trained properly, then it doesn't really matter that, if they're doing 5 years or 10 years. What matters is they know what they're doing. And I just don't understand how it took them 6 days to realise that they'd had a release in error, because there should be checks. And good God, I'm sure, since Kaboosh escaped, David Lammy enforced a five-page document that would stop all this. Clearly it hasn't. I think we really, really need to get a grip of our prisons.
Earlier in the show, we were talking with safety expert Philip Grindle about people's perception of feeling a lot less safe out on our streets. This doesn't help, does it?
No, not at all. I think the public want reassurance from the police. They want reassurance that those that are committed to custody are going to stay in custody. I think we're pretty much failing on both fronts, really, at the moment.
Do you think there's this sort of 6-day delay in doing anything about it? Is there a possibility that they did know earlier and they were panicking and trying to find him before they actually reported it? Or would it be that they would categorically have to report it as soon as they knew?
No, honestly, Jane, they would have to report it as soon as they knew. It seems that somebody's gone back over the paperwork or the calculations or whatever and picked it up. But yeah, the prison, it just isn't worth. And there's more than one person responsible, so it would have to be a collaborative sort of doom and gloom to hold it back, and it just wouldn't. Heads would roll from the top down.
So what will be happening now to find him? Will it be, police helicopters and?
Well, I mean, we don't know too much about who it is who's escaped and what he was charged with, or indeed what he was convicted of. But certainly the prison will be liaising closely with the local police. They'll be looking at who's visited him, any phone calls he's made, has he got any family connections, in what area those connections are, any friends, that sort of thing.
And putting out a photo, perhaps, because it was a member
absolutely.
of the public, wasn't it, that helped before?
I'm surprised they haven't put out a photo yet. But it seems to me that higher ups and the way that David Lammy scuttled off PMQs, I would imagine he's going and having some sharp words in people's ears.
Well, I imagine he is. Vanessa Frake, former prison governor at HMP Wormwood Scrups. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to take some of your calls now. Thank you for waiting so patiently. We have Charles in London reacting to PMQs. Hi, Charles.
Hello.
What's your reaction to the David Lammy, James Cartledge spat?
Well, I'm not going to lie, I didn't actually watch that very closely, but from what Vanessa Frake was saying, I've actually been in and out of quite a few jails myself, and I've seen from the other side what goes on, and yes, about half of what she said was very, very on the nail. It is falling apart, it's a shambles, there's, things that need addressing, like staffing levels and all that.
Just to clarify, Charles, why have you been in and out of them?
For various reasons.
Right. Oh, so you mean you were an inmate? You're not someone visiting like a social worker or?
No.
Okay, so tell us what are some of the problems that you've seen?
Multitudes. During COVID, there were massive influx of things they call MPS, which is spice and whatnot, and that was being brought in by staff. They were trying to blame it all on drones. It obviously wasn't drones. There was no visits. Everybody was locked in their cells, and the place was awash with drugs. And this is G4S-run Park Prison in Bridgend. They've had the highest number of deaths in any prison in the UK in a short space of time. And, it's a complete farce. It really is.
Again, I'm going to use this phrase again. I've already used it once, but it beggars belief that people, as you say, allegedly staff, are bringing in drugs to prison. That is surely a very easily solved situation by the police. Find out what they're doing and arrest them.
Not so much the police. I would have thought it was more the prison security's job to do that. But the problem is there's so much corruption within the British prison system. They're trying to prop their own mortgages up by selling drugs to prisoners, which then erodes prison safety and security, which is a complete contradiction in terms.
So do you feel that it's ever going to get sorted out, or do you feel that the problem is just so big that it's unmanageable?
I think they should just replace all staff in any failing prisons and send the army in.
Very good point. Although I suppose the army have got to defend us in other ways. But yeah, very interesting call. Thank you very much. That's Charles in London. We have another caller, Laura in Wiltshire. I think you've got something to say about Sick Note Britain, Laura.
Well, hi, and welcome to Talk. Great show.
Thank you.
Great first show. A bit like Charles, I'd really like to talk about Sick Note Britain, because that's what I called about a couple of hours ago. But a bit like him, I'd like to do a complete 180.
Oh, please do.
On prisons. So my best friend, who's a really intelligent, amazing guy, age 61, retrained in his 50s, and works in a prison in Wales. He's worked on the wing. He has worked in intelligence in the prison, and I'm fascinated talking to him because, unlike Charles, I fortunately don't have much experience of prison. And he said that the problem they have is that, for instance, it's a modern prison, and they have arches and detectors for looking at weapons and drugs that can be switched on and manned. But during the main hours that most of the staff arrived, they're not manned. So people can come in and out, and presumably staff can come in and out. When he was working in intelligence in the prison, they absolutely found that there were particular inmates, some of whom are part of gangs who are deliberately sent to prison in order to deal drugs in prison. They identify them. And guess what the governor said? Drugs are not a priority for us. So, you know, and this is not during COVID, this is recently. The whole prison service is in a mess. And he said there are so many foreign prisoners who ought to be sent home and could be. And there are people on indefinite sentences, which is something Blair brought in, who are way beyond the years that they should still be in prison. But the process for them to get out and get those rescinded is so complicated, they're blocking up the system. I mean, this is stuff that intelligent people ought to be able to sort out.
Common sense. I mean, when you hear that, you sort of understand why mistakes get made and so many prisoners get released by mistake.
But there's no excuse for that. And Lammy's performance today was lamentable and embarrassing, and everyone in that party and his side of the house should be ashamed of themselves. It was appalling.
So you felt it was okay for James Cartledge to use up all of his questions on that subject?
What would be the point of him asking a different question when Lammy wasn't going to answer his question? You ask the first one, he doesn't answer it. You ask again, he doesn't answer it. What's the point in asking him anything else? Because this current government are not capable of facing up to the truth and answering in a straight and honest way.
Do you feel that he didn't know the answer to the question, or do you think he was evading the question because he did know something that he didn't want to
I don't know,
say?
but neither is a good excuse when you're standing in for PMQs and you're the justice guy. Neither of those are acceptable. And as Peter Cardwell said earlier, he should have been briefed on this.
Yeah.
And if he knew about this other prisoner who's already escaped or been let out, he should have been briefed on that and been able to deal with it. And I wonder whether Cartledge had got a sniff about that, about this breaking news, and that's why he was bringing it up so often.
Yeah, well, Laura, thank you so much. I think you could probably be a shoo-in for the next Justice Secretary. It's nearly time up for me now, but in the studio with me is Ian Collins.
Hello, Jane Moore. How are you?
I keep saying good morning. It's afternoon now, isn't it?
It's afternoon now, isn't it? Do you know, I was thinking this morning, I was listening to you at the beginning, and I suddenly remembered that you did do you remember the original talk radio?
Yes, in some
in the 90s,
broom
in
cupboard in somewhere, yes.
Yeah.
I did. Well, you see, you remember. I had actually forgotten
because I
that.
was there then. I was like about 11 or something, you know, just a little whippersnapper.
I remember nothing of my life. It's literally, ask me this afternoon what I did this morning and I'll forget.
But it does all go in about 5 minutes, doesn't it? That's the trouble. You know,
what are you talking about
today? We're going to keep our eye on this story of, you know, David Lammy's lost another prisoner. For God's sake, how bad can it get over there?
Do you think James Cartledge knew?
Well, you do wonder, don't you?
Yes.
When you start to look in, you know, haven't got to delve too deeply to wonder.
I mean, he came at it and at it and
100%.
at it. And do you think David Lammy knew?
Well, that's the thing. He would never say he knew, would he?
He didn't seem to be very across his brief, did he? He wasn't even wearing a poppy at the start.
I know it's not specific. You know, David Lammy doesn't sit there at in the office at every prison, like checking out prison. I get that. However, it's just a terrible look for a government that are completely losing direction in so many ways. And now they're losing prisoners as well as just general political direction. So we're going to talk about that. The sick note Britain story, I know you've touched on that, which is just beyond extraordinary.
It's huge, isn't it?
Well, it is huge. And what's more frightening about it is that it's going to get worse. It's not like one of those things where you go, don't worry, in a year's time, these figures, historically, they go back down again. Historically, they've never been this devastating, and they're projected to become increasingly more problematic.
I remember recently a speech not that long ago, Kemi Badenoch saying something like 50% of Britain is getting up in the morning to pay for the other 50%.
That's right. There is, yes,
which is astonishing.
That is an astonishing
I mean, we could be going
well.
towards, you know, 40% getting up to pay for 60%.
Well, you've got 1,000 people a day that are being put onto one type of benefit, which means they don't have to work and will never even have to look for work as well. 5,000 put onto disability benefit. Now, if you're disabled and genuinely disabled, that's exactly where I want my tax money to go.
Absolutely, no one would argue with that.
Completely. And every now and again you have to keep making that point in case, you know, somebody misinterprets what's being said. But actually, there's clearly, I mean, this whole idea that, you know, a bit of anxiety, and I do think there are some